Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Got a Minute More, a brand new podcast from us, the fine folks behind the Got a Minute YouTube and IGTV movie review show, where we take a movie and try and break it down and review it for you in just 60 seconds, which, as you can imagine, and my co-writer Kevin Brown will attest to, is difficult. Which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast, so we could sort of stretch our critical legs a little bit, right, Kev?
Exactly. I've struggled very often. I'm incredibly long-winded, so 1 minute has always been a challenge.
That's true. That's true. And so am I, to be honest with you. I talk for a living, so, you know, I'm fine with being able to have this nice little platform where we can sort of, as I say, stretch our critical legs. I want to say before we really start here, I want to say a quick little thank you to our good friend Michael Goldberg of the Bar 42 podcast. He's one of the guys who got us into podcasting in the first place. But not only that, he was the one who gave us the name Got a Minute More, which I love. It's just a nice little extension of the brand that we're trying to build for this, and really says all that you need to know about this podcast. Today we're going to take a look at some movies that we saw in early October. We're going to try and give you a couple of episodes in the first, like a week or so of this podcast going live, where we can recap the movies that we've watched in October. We will always indicate, by the way, whether or not we're getting into spoiler territory. If you're listening to us on Spreaker, Spreaker has a great little feature, or on our website, by the way, which is gotaminute.reviews.com. Plug the website, Jamie did. The Spreaker player has a great little feature wherein it divides the podcast into chapters, and we will always indicate in those chapters when we are getting into spoiler territory. So you are going to see a little indication that we're talking about A Star is Born, for example, which we will do on this show. And then you will see one that says A Star is Born spoilers. So you can skip them if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to get into those awful, awful spoilers. And with that in mind, let's start, Kevin, with A Star is Born, which we saw back at the start of October. A movie that I really, really enjoyed. But it felt like it was missing something, and I think that you are on the same page with me.
Yeah, I think kind of the movie just felt incomplete, and I don't know if you want to jump right into spoilers here, but
oh my God, I'm going to have to put a chapter indication already.
But I think the thing that it's missing is a relatively big spoiler, so here we go, I guess.
Okay, well, let's first say what we really liked about the movie, just in sure. General terms. One of the things that I thought was great about it was, for a movie that is so centered around music, a lot of times music in Hollywood movies is just not very good. It's very on the nose. There's not a lot of subtlety to it. It doesn't feel like a genuinely written song. The songs in this movie, I think, are absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, we talked right after we saw the movie about how I think Lady Gaga is, obviously there are more movies to come, but she seems like a shoo-in for Best Supporting Actress here.
Yeah.
And one of the main reasons is so much of the movie hinges on these big emotional moments that center around her performing live in different settings. The first time she's brought on stage, the first time she's allowed to do her own solo for Bradley Cooper's Rockstar, and each one of those moments is so nailed, not only acting wise, but also just the actual music is so incredible and powerful that you really buy into the fact that she is this superstar in the making.
Yeah, it really is those sequences where the movie's at its absolute best, not just from the musical standpoint either, but from the way that it's shot and the way that it's cut. Those performances are so energy-filled and powerful.
Yeah, you 100% buy into the fact that that he sees what he sees in her, the crowd sees what they see in her, and that's really the main basis of the movie, and that's why the movie works, is because Lady Gaga nailed all of those musical moments so well.
It's also got a really strong supporting cast too, and Sam Elliott is fantastic in everything, I think. Props to them, by the way, for putting him in a Dodge truck, because of course he is the voice of those Dodge truck commercials. I was like, oh yeah, he wouldn't be driving a Ford in the movie, would he? But there's some great secondary, tertiary performances as well. I love the the cross dressers, the transvestites in the drag show that
Mm-hmm.
was at the start of the movie, which is well, I don't want to say anything until we get into spoiler territory. Also, Andrew Dice Clay as Lady Gaga's father was really
Yeah,
good. It's a small role, but he was really good in it.
yeah, exactly. You don't, I guess you just don't expect that from Andrew Dice Clay, and that's what has gotten him so much attention. We talked very briefly about this, that I have seen articles suggesting that he might win Best Supporting Actor, and I said I don't agree with that. I don't think there's enough to the role to actually earn a nomination or a win. I think if anyone was going to win Best Supporting Actor, it would be Sam Elliott from this.
Yeah, I honestly, I think both actors get a nomination. I don't think Dice Clay is anywhere near strong enough, or at least that the role for him is anywhere near strong enough. I think if they had fleshed out that role, he's so good in those few moments that he has in the movie that it was really surprising. But Sam Elliott just nails it. There's that one crucial scene, and we'll get into spoiler territory in just a few seconds, but that one crucial scene that he just absolutely nails.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, let's slip into spoiler territory and talk again about that one big problem that you and I both have with this movie.
Yeah, so I guess the big problem I have with the movie is it seems like there's one confrontation that Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga have where she's in a bathtub right after a Saturday Night Live performance, and Bradley Cooper comes in and basically says like she's embarrassing herself, and he goes way over the line as well. He calls her ugly, et cetera, and we're not supposed to support the way he's doing it, but
Yeah,
I did think that we were supposed to support what he was saying about her career, because the way the movie presents her career is she's this superstar with all this promise, and then managers get a hold of her and they start giving her background dancers and turning her into a more of a pop star,
yeah,
and it kind
taking
of,
so the soul out of it, and
yeah, and it kind of culminates in that Saturday Night Live performance where she's singing about like guys with cute butts or whatever.
yeah,
And I thought
easily
that,
the worst song in the movie.
yeah, and I was sure that was intentional, but the problem is if that is intentional, there's never a moment where that's really acknowledged or that comes to a head. The manager is never confronted about any of that. There's never a moment where she realizes what she's doing to her career. It's just kind of like it's kind of just ignored after that in a way, because we get into what happens with Bradley Cooper's character, it kind of just dies off after that scene, and I thought there was going to be a resolution to that that never actually comes.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too because that is kind of left just hanging there. Now, I suppose you could sort of argue the case that she doesn't really, and this is major spoilers here, she doesn't really come to the realization of maybe how far down that path she's gone until after he takes his life.
Hmm.
Through no fault of hers or anything. It's her manager is a complete piece of shit in the movie and really the villain of the piece, and kind of underdeveloped in that role as well because it just sort of happens that like he comes in and shits all over Bradley Cooper after granted a very embarrassing and damaging moment for both of them, especially
Hmm.
for her though as her star is sort of on the rise. But you could kind of argue that in the finale of the film, she starts to realize that is the path that she has gone down. It's really underdeveloped though, and it's not quite there.
Right. I did say when we were talking about it, like, I'm not 100% sure if the idea is it's left a little vague intentionally. Like, the idea is when she's performing the final musical piece, the end of the movie is her performing a song at Bradley Cooper's funeral. I don't know if the idea is as she's performing there and getting this huge reaction from the crowd again, that's supposed to be her realizing like what her true purpose is in the music industry.
Right.
But if it
Sort of.
is, then I guess that's fine. It just feels either underdeveloped or just a little anticlimactic in a way.
Yeah, it was, to me, it was kind of a phoenix rising, artistically anyway, a phoenix rising from the ashes in that moment. I believe it's Carnegie Hall as well that she's performing at, this tribute concert for him. So, you make Carnegie Hall, you are considered a true artist. I don't know if that's absolutely true, though. Do you remember? I honestly can't recall.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
It's in my head because that's such a symbolic venue. But in any case, yeah, that a little underdeveloped. But, overall, just a really, really good movie.
Yeah, I mean, that does not take away from the fact that the majority of the movie is very dramatic, very, very powerful. Lady Gaga, for the most part, her songs are incredible, except for when I think they're not supposed to be
Yeah,
intentionally.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's one of the better movies I've seen this year for sure.
Moving on to our second movie, the I'm not quite sure how to talk about this. The superhero movie Venom.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's exactly what it is.
So you saw this. I have not yet seen it, and I probably won't see it until it gets released on digital. Tell us about it.
Okay, so Venom, if you watched our Got a Minute review, is a movie with the tagline, "The world has enough superheroes," that promptly takes one of the most famous villains in the Spider-Man universe and just turns him into another superhero. I'm not sure exactly what anyone thought they were doing with that.
Great marketing campaign, though, really.
Yeah, it was. I even
Worked.
don't mind that Eminem song, which closes the movie. So
Yeah, I
there
still
you go.
haven't heard it, but I'm just avoiding everything with that movie. But
So in any event, the the reason he becomes a superhero is because he infects Eddie Brock, who is played by Tom Hardy, and he decides that Eddie Brock is a loser on his planet, and Venom is a loser on the symbiote planet, and that's why he's going to save the world now instead of destroy it, which is what he initially came to do.
Losers got to stick together, I guess.
I guess so.
Uh,
Yeah, there's a lot of really good actors here. Jenny Slate and Michelle Williams are here,
mhm.
and there is no discernible reason that either of them would be in those roles. There's especially Jenny Slate, who, if you've seen, what was that movie called? Problem Child, The Obvious Child? I can't remember off the top of my head. She was in a movie a couple years ago where I actually thought she deserved an Academy Award nomination. This role has less than nothing for her to do. Um, Michelle Williams, same thing. She is generic girlfriend. That's her role. It's pointless. Uh, yeah, there's just a whole lot of it's trying to be funny, and I just don't get that. I don't get
Right.
why you want Venom to be a funny superhero movie.
Yeah, such a dark, serious kind of anti-hero villain, essentially. Um, really, really strange tone, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's And I mean that doesn't mean it doesn't always work when it's trying to be funny. There are some relatively funny moments with Eddie Brock hearing the voice of Venom in his head, and the voice will be telling him to do something or whatever, or asking if he can bite the head off someone or whatever. It does
He's
have
asking
moments.
permission.
He's Yeah, essentially, he's saying because Eddie Brock is trying, it's kind of like Terminator 2 in a way where he's trying to teach Venom not to hurt good people, only
Right,
hurt the
right.
bad people. Um, so yeah, it plays very weird. The villain is super generic, and that's not the fault of Riz Ahmed. I don't think he's doing anything wrong in the role. I just think
Hmm.
he is super goddamn generic. He's basically Elon Musk. That's basically his character. Um, and yeah, I just don't understand any of the decisions made in the movie. And then the post-credit scene, spoiler alert,
Hmm.
is Woody Harrelson as Carnage is introduced. And I don't know, why didn't you just make that movie then?
Yeah, man, I would have watched that for sure.
Yeah, like,
Venom versus Carnage?
and that also gets rid of the problem I have about turning Venom into a superhero, because in the comic run of Venom, Venom kind of becomes a superhero because of Carnage. He doesn't become a superhero because you're a nerd like me. It's it's because Carnage is such a gigantic threat. It kind of becomes, I need to work with humanity to stop Carnage.
Right.
So, or in the comic book version, it's I need to work with Spider-Man to stop Carnage.
Right.
And then that would have solved that problem too. So I really don't understand the creative decisions made. It's made a ton of money, so it looks like we are going to get a sequel, despite the fact that it doesn't seem most people liked the movie.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll see what they do. If Woody Harrelson comes back for Carnage, then maybe that's a thing, but I don't know.
And then how easy do you think it would be to tie that back into the Sony Spider-Verse now? Like, is that the goal, do you think? Just to get rid of that separation between the two that presently exists?
Well, apparently that was the reason that they chose to do this in PG-13, which is another issue, obviously, when you're making a Venom movie, and Venom is a character that bites people's heads off and stuff.
And I still don't understand that decision, as with all the success that the studios have had the last couple of years with the two Deadpools and with Logan, why a studio would still be gun shy. It's not like you couldn't just take that character and put him in a PG-13 movie later to bring him back into the sort of the MCU-ish Spider-Verse.
Right. I think you establish Venom as this, like, hard R, like, super dangerous threat, and then when you bring him into Spider-Man, if that's the end goal, even though Spider-Man is a PG-13 universe, at least you've built him up in people's minds as Venom, as
Right.
not a watered down superhero.
In the same way that you would hope they would do for Deadpool.
With an X-Men movie, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If he were to eventually become an X-Men, or, straight into the actual Marvel Cinematic Universe. But
Exactly.
in any case, so kind of a hard pass on Venom.
Yeah, very hard pass.
Oh, good. So I made the right choice for once in my life. What else we got? Oh, yes. Bad Times at the El Royale, a movie that you and I were both really looking forward to because of who is involved on the creative side.
Yeah, I am a massive Drew Goddard fan, have been ever since basically his start in the industry with Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. I think for pure script writing, it'd be hard to find someone who's more exciting in Hollywood right now than him. And then you also had a ridiculously great cast and a cool premise for a movie. So I was very excited.
Yeah, I really only know Drew Goddard from his movies, of course. The Cabin in the Woods is just a phenomenal piece of satire. Maybe the best horror satire since Scream. Actually, not maybe. It's definitely the best horror satire since Scream. But I would even put it very close to the same level as Scream in terms of that creativity and that twisting of tropes that are so familiar to us from North American horror movies, and then also branching out into the sort of the international horror movies as well. So yeah, I was definitely looking forward to seeing what he was going to do with this kind of large ensemble cast mystery noir type movie as well. Ended up really liking the first, let's say, hour and a half of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes a bit of a turn for the worse. I suppose we should just jump into spoiler territory here right off the bat.
Sure.
It's the appearance of Chris Hemsworth later in the film that unfortunately sort of turns this whole thing into a more standard piece, and all the sort of fun and twistiness sort of goes out of it in that moment.
So yeah, it kind of in a way becomes almost a Tarantino-ish climax to the movie, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. I do agree. It is very odd, especially looking back now. As you know, I don't watch movie trailers, but I did watch the trailer to see how this was marketed, and it's marketed as Chris Hemsworth's movie, and
Yes,
Chris Hemsworth
he's front and center.
Yeah, Chris Hemsworth is only in the last half hour of this movie.
Yeah.
So
he makes a very brief appearance in one character's flashback.
Yep.
And then is never seen again. So it's just there's a tease that it is going to be, what they were selling us in the trailers and in the TV commercials. But yeah, then he's just not there for another 45 minutes. And when he does show up, as I say, sort of all the mystery and intrigue just sort of goes out of the movie, and it becomes a straight ahead hostage situation for a good 45 minutes.
Right.
It feels like it anyway.
Yeah. And I think given the way the movie sets everything up, and given the way the movie starts to unravel everything, you kind of expect, or it leads you to expect different things to happen, and the movie intentionally denies you some of those things. And I think that's going to be where the movie either hits or misses with a lot of people. For example, there's the constant running theme of the videotape of what we assume is likely JFK and Marilyn Monroe.
Right.
And it's never actually established if that is what it is. We don't see the tape. Eventually they just burn the tape.
Right. Which is a very Tarantino-esque kind of thing to do. The briefcase in Pulp Fiction, especially, and
it's just kind of left hanging. And I don't know. I mean, we said leaving the theater, because we saw this together. I didn't mind the fact that we never got the definitive explanation of what that tape was, who it was on the tape, or anything like that. That didn't really bother me.
No, it doesn't really matter. I mean, all you have to know is that these characters think that it has incredible value, that it can be incredibly important historically. So, that's fine. I don't need that answer. I can have that left to my imagination, because that's not really the point of what's happening.
Yeah, and there are some other questions that are left hanging as well. I guess we should briefly kind of explain some of the premise so that some of this makes sense.
Yeah, it's all very vague at this point.
Yeah, essentially, it's a bunch of characters come to a hotel, the El Royale, and they start to discover that there are trick mirrors and recording devices in all their rooms so that people can be spied on at all times. And one of the big questions as well, not only is who's on this tape that everyone is after, but who is ordering this recording? Because we know it's not the CIA, because John Hamm's character is a CIA agent.
Right.
So we're kind of left hanging with who is ordering the kid that works there to record all these people, and that's never explained either.
Yeah, it's this faceless, they call it management, I believe. It's just, which reminded me very much of, I don't know if anyone's seen the old HBO series Carnival. There was a very mysterious entity that was called management, which gave this traveling circus essentially their marching orders, right? And made them do strange things. So that was, it was very reminiscent of that for me as well. And again, I don't really need the answer as to who it is, but it's kind of weird that it's just left hanging, that we don't really get any closure on that.
Yeah. So the first time, and now I think we're probably actually, let's talk a bit about the performances, because I do want to commend the entire cast. There is nothing but great performances on the screen in this movie. A couple people I haven't personally seen. I've never seen a 50 Shades of Grey movie, so I had never seen Dakota Johnson. It turns out she can act. I don't remember ever seeing Bill Pullman's son. I can't remember his first name off the top of my head.
Lewis.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Not Tom Holland. That's his name.
Yes, not Tom Holland.
Not to be dismissive, because he's actually really talented, but man, does he ever look like Tom Holland. It's freaky.
Yeah, and obviously the joke also stands because the filmmakers wanted Tom Holland in the role that he's playing.
Place.
Yeah.
Right. So
he's great. He's maybe the best part of the movie. Yeah, and everyone else is great. We talked about Baby Driver a long time ago and how that was John Hamm's best movie performance. I think this is better even than that.
Yeah, this is certainly real close. You know what a huge fan I am of Baby Driver, but man, this is right up there.
So yeah, everyone really shines.
I should say even Chris Hemsworth, because it sounds like we were sort of shitting on him earlier. It's not his performance that's the problem. It's just the turn that the story takes when his character finally does arrive. He's fine in the role. He's actually very good in the role. And this is a very different thing from Thor, from, well, even from Cabin in the Woods, which he was in with Drew Goddard as well. So, Cynthia Erivo, though, I think is the standout for me. She was the soul singer, the backup singer, who was trying to make a better life for herself, and really the only truly innocent character, I think, in the film. She's just sort of there by accident because she's trying to stay away from the really expensive hotels in Reno, which is where she's supposed to perform the next night.
Yeah.
And she's a stage actress. This was, I think, her first film, one of her first films anyway. And there was a lot of subtlety in her performance that I really thought was really strong, especially given the fact that she is a stage actress, a Tony Award winning stage actress, by the way. And of course, when you're on stage, you have to emote, and you have to often over emote because you're trying to, sell to the back of the audience, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's incredible, and her arc is very, very good as well.
Yeah, that character was excellent. Jeff Bridges, always good, is predictably excellent in this movie as well, and I think maybe worthy of an Oscar nomination.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is the kind of movie that's going to get looked at by the Academy. They have a very narrow scope of what a movie should be for an Academy Award, and
True.
I don't know that this is the kind of movie they're going to look at.
True. The flashback sequences, though, which is one of the other things that I really liked, and I almost felt like Drew Goddard should have worked on Lost. I don't know if he may have written a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
Did he not?
Yeah, he did very briefly. I'm not sure how long he stayed there, but I do know he wrote one of my favorite episodes from the first season of the show.
I have him as a producer for a few years on Lost. I didn't even realize that when I said it. I was just thinking a lot of those flashback sequences felt very much like Lost, and those sort of side stories where you learned about the character's history and their backstory and how they got to be where they are. And that's this beautiful running theme throughout the movie where we just keep going back and learning about characters and their motivations.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you think of how this movie ends, and whatever you think of what becomes of the movie once Chris Hemsworth's character shows up to the hotel, everything before that is absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, one of the best movies of the year, at least for those first 90 minutes.
Yeah. So I guess now we will get into spoilers, because I have a hot take after seeing this movie for a second time.
Okay, real spoiler territory here.
Okay, so when we first saw the movie, one of our collective criticisms was that I thought Dakota Johnson and her sister's character were the most interesting thing in the movie. Their dynamic as these two girls who were abused by their father, who grew up together, and Dakota Johnson was constantly protecting her younger sister from being abused. And then that skips ahead to her younger sister running away from home and meeting Billy Lee, Chris Hemsworth's character, who turns out to be this Charles Manson-esque cult leader.
Right.
And he starts doing things that Dakota Johnson's very uncomfortable with, making her have fist fights in front of bonfires. Mm-hmm. Dakota Johnson's sister kills someone. It's not exactly clear who it is that she murders.
Right.
And so I thought that was the most interesting arc of any of the characters coming into it. And then when Chris Hemsworth shows up, he just shoots Dakota Johnson dead almost immediately into the third act. Mm-hmm. And we both felt when we first watched it that was super anticlimactic.
Yeah.
On watching a second time, I think it works a lot better than we gave it credit for, and it's one particular little thing that happens in that scene that kind of makes it work for me. Basically, the way the scene unfolds is She is tied up, and he wants her to choose between red and black at the roulette table.
Right.
And if she chooses wrong, he's going to shoot her. So he spins the ball, and she refuses to pick a color. And her sister is looking at her, just coldly says, "If Billy Lee's giving you a chance, I think you should take it."
Right.
Basically in that moment, choosing Billy Lee over her.
Yes.
And then Dakota Johnson finally does choose a color. She chooses wrong and gets shot. When she falls over from being shot, she's still tied to the chair. She's bleeding out. There's a brief flashback that kind of makes this all work. So the flashback is another look at her as a child after being beaten up by their father. And she's bleeding, and she looks up, and her sister is staring at her. And her sister has this completely blank, emotionless expression on her face. And then their dad comes into the frame, puts his arm around her sister, and they walk away together. And then we cut back to Dakota Johnson on the ground dying. She's bleeding out. She looks up, and she sees her sister standing the exact same way with the exact same blank expression on her face. And then Billy Lee walks into the frame the exact same way her father does, puts his arm around her sister, and walks away. And I thought that kind of made it work. That kind of suggested that it was kind of saying there was nothing she ever could have done. Her sister was too far gone. And I thought it worked on second watch.
So she was just sort of beyond saving, and there was never really any doubt as to what her choice was going to be.
Exactly.
And that's interesting. I didn't really catch that the first time around. So, yeah, that definitely helps to improve that. I was so much in love with that dynamic of the two of them. I still would have liked to have seen it go on longer. By the way, the sister is played by Kaylee Spaney, who's really only been in one other movie, and it was this year. It was Pacific Rim Uprising, the Oscar nominee, guaranteed Oscar nominee, Kaylee Spaney, or Pacific Rim Uprising. So she's pretty new to the scene as well. I'm not sure.
Because I watched that movie, unfortunately for me.
The girl? I don't know. I'm assuming it was the girl?
That sounds about right.
That sounds like one of the characters that would have been in a movie like Pacific Rim Uprising to me. So
yeah,
I'm really not sure. I have that as a credit to hers. But yeah,
I mean, it's not like I'm ever going to remember it anyway, because who's going to remember any of the characters from Pacific Rim Uprising?
But she was great in Bad Times at the Royale, as was the whole cast. I think that's the one thing we definitely agree on. And as we say, like the first 90 minutes of the movie, one of the best twisty thrillers that I've seen in a very, very long time. So
yeah, absolutely. If for nothing else, whether you follow the last 30 minutes, it's very long. It's almost 2.5 hours long.
True.
So we're talking about almost 2 hours that are just spectacular and very twisty, very surprising, brilliantly written. All the flashbacks are so interesting, and the way they just keep tying everything together, the way it reveals each little secret from the movie. I think it all works so well, whether or not you buy into the way it ends.
All right. Well, there's another one that's I think we can probably recommend that one. I don't know if you need to rush out to the theater to see it. But I think it certainly should get a look, and maybe you'll come to a different conclusion than we did about the ending of it. Just for us, it felt like, a lot of that sort of originality and fun and twistiness just sort of went out of the movie in that last act, which is a really long last act as well. So, All right. In any case, let's wrap it up for now. We are going to next time on this podcast, we'll take a look at a few of the other movies that we've seen in October. First Man is certainly among them. That's another strong Oscar Beatty type movie, and one that's a little less about Oscar bait and more about member berries. If you're a South Park fan, Halloween, the David Gordon Green and Danny McBride sequel to the 1978 classic, which, by the way, as we're recording this, is now officially 40 years old. It turns 40 years old the day that we're recording this, and still one of my all-time favorite horror movies, maybe the greatest slasher movie ever made. So yes, indeed, John Carpenter, round of applause. Jamie Lee Curtis, amazing. We'll get into what the sequel looked like next time. Until then, thank you so much for listening to us. Be sure to follow us on GotAMinuteReviews.com, Got a Minute Reviews on Instagram and Facebook as well. And yeah, please do subscribe to this podcast. We plan on doing a lot more of them. We'll catch you next time. And I'm definitely going to re-record that ending because "we'll catch you next time" sucks.